Hello, my name is Rob from ZEIT-IO and I will show you today the ZEIT-IO time recording API. ZEIT-IO is a tool for time tracking and invoicing, especially for agencies and freelancers. At ZEIT-IO you can create a project with a budget, and to that project you can assign time records and expenses, and of course you can also create a PDF invoice and send the PDF invoice to your customers. And all that is also possible through the public REST API. Let's jump directly into it. I created here a completely new account, and as you can see, everything is empty in this account. And in the left upper corner I can see the timer, so no matter where I am in the application, I can always use the timer to record times. I can hit the start button to start the timer, and I can hit the stop button to record a time recording, and now I get an error message because there is no project. So if you want to record times, then of course we need to have a project first. So let's create one. Let's give it a name. Blockchain DID. So every project needs a name and also a unique identifier. The project name will appear on the PDF invoice, and the project identifier will appear everywhere here in this web application. By default it's the same, but if you want to have a different name on the invoice, you can choose so. Then let's give it a description. Create digital identity on the blockchain. Alright, and also every project needs a budget. Let's give it an hourly budget, let's say 320 hours, and we charge the customer 130 euro. That gives us a total budget of 41,600 euro. This currency I can choose euro or US dollar, and we go ahead with euro. We can say that the project started 1st of June and it will end of September. Okay, save. Project was created, so I can hit the play button again, and we get here a little summary of the project. You can see the project name, identifier, description, period. It's a project about 121 days, and we have 117 days left till the deadline. And we also get a nice progress bar for that. We also get a progress bar for the hour budget and for the total euro budget. Okay, now we can create activities to this project. That's optional, but let's do it. An activity could be something like development, testing and meeting. And we also have notifications to a project. By default, ZEIT-IO creates two notifications, one for 80 and one for 90%. And that means if the project budget reaches 80%, then I will get an email notification. And of course I can create much more notifications. Okay. And there are two kinds of projects at ZEIT-IO. There are projects which you create on your own, and only you can assign time records and expenses to it. And there are projects created by an organization. So an organization can invite you to their projects through a contract, and then you can also assign time records and expenses to their projects. And that you would see here under collaboration projects. But for today we will just go ahead with this project here. Okay, so the timer is running. Of course I can also hit the pause button to pause the timer. And if I continue working, I can hit the play button again to resume the timer. And if I hit the stop button, then I get this nice form. And with that I can finish my time recording. Here I can select a project. Right now I have only one project with 3 activities. Let's take testing. And the hourly budget adjusts according to the project. So if I would have a second project with a different hourly wage and I would select that, then the hourly wage would also be adjusted here. And in collaboration projects, it's possible to have more than one hourly wage, but that's not the topic for today. I can see the date, it's pre-filled with today. I can see the from and to time. and pause is 0. So I hit the pause button, but here this UI is rounding everything to minutes, and because the pause was less than 30 seconds, it doesn't show up here. Here I can see the duration of this time record, it's 2 minutes, and of course I can leave a comment. My first time recording, and I can save that, and now I can see my first time record. I can see the date, the from to time, the comment, the duration, and also the wage. Okay. So of course I don't have to hit every time the play button. I can also hit simply the stop button, and then I can also do a manual entry. So let's say I had a meeting this morning from 6 to 7, and I made a 10-minute pause. So actually the duration was 50 minutes, and comment is had meeting with team, save and close, and now it was recorded. So here you can see from 6 to 7, pause 10 minutes, my comment and duration and wage again, and everything is also summed up. So I can see the total time I recorded for today and also my total wage for today. Okay, so some users don't like to use this start-stop thing. Some users prefer just to enter a fixed amount of hours and minutes per date and per project. And for that we have this record times button here. So if I hit that, I come to this page, and this page is much simpler. Here I don't need an exact start-stop time. Here I can just pick a date and enter hours and minutes per project. So for example, I could say that today for 4 hours I did some hard work and save, and now I get the feedback from the server that it was saved successfully. And if I go back to times, I can see the time record here, which was recorded 4 hours and my hourly wage. Okay, so that are the 3 ways to record times at ZEIT-IO. And everything what I showed you here is also possible through the public API. So let's jump to the public API. Okay, if I want to use this public API, I need to authorize with an API key. And my API key I can find in settings, API key. Here it is. Can take that, authorize. That worked, close, and now I can use all the endpoints on this API. So if you want to develop something like a mobile application, then this first endpoint will be interesting for you, the authentication endpoint. Here you can send with the payload an email and password, and you will get also back the API key. And then with that API key you can use all the other endpoints on this API. Let's scroll down. Here at the bottom we have the user TimeRecords API, and here we have a couple of endpoints, and with these endpoints I can also control the timer and also do manual entries. So we have here get time records, we have start, reset, pause, resume, stop, we have post, start, stop, patch, start, stop, we have duration endpoint, and we have get time records by ID and delete by ID. Okay, so with the first one we can fetch all the time records we recorded already. We have here also a filter. We could also filter the time records by from date, to date and project. But for right now we will leave the filter empty, and I just execute that. I get back a response code 200 because it worked. I get back a result object, and in the result object we have an array of time records. And here we have now 3 time records because we created already 3 time records. Okay. Here in the result object we can see that from and to is already set. So if we don't set it explicitly, then ZEIT-IO will set the from date to the first first date of the current month, and the 2 to the last date of the current month, and the project filter by default is null. So that means if I don't set the filters, then by default I get back all the time records of the current month. Okay. So now let's go through one of these time record objects so that we know how a time record object looks like. Of course, every time record has a unique ID and also a type. There are currently 2 types. There is this type start-stop, which has a start time and stop time, and another type would be duration. So time records of the type duration don't have an exact start-stop time, they just have hours and minutes set. Okay, so then here we have start-stop time, and in this case it's in the Berlin time zone. And it's in the Berlin time zone because I configured the Berlin time zone in my account. So if I go back to settings, to localization, I can configure my time zone, and ZEIT-IO is storing all the dates and times in UTC in the database. And when the user is fetching data, then it will be converted to the time zone of the user. So in this case, to the Berlin time zone. Okay. When I can see the pause in seconds, so to this time record, we recorded 600 seconds pause. With pause string, I get a little bit more human readable way of this, so that was 10 minutes. I get the total duration. The total duration without pause, that was 3000 seconds, and duration string is a little bit more readable for humans. That is converted, it would be 50 minutes. I get the total hours and total minutes, that's 0 hours and 50 minutes. We get the comment, we get the contract ID. In this case it's null, but if I would record times to a collaboration project, then I would be connected with a project through a contract, and then here I would see the contract ID. But for this case it's 0, it's null. And we also see the hourly wage category. This is also more important for contracts, and if I record times to a collaboration project, because then I can have more than one hourly wage, but in this case it's just default, and for this use case it's not even relevant. And we see the hourly wage, which was relevant for this time recording, and this is now in cents. So it's 13,000 cents, that's 130 euro, and amount shows me the total amount of the worked time of this time record in cents. That's 10,833 cents. That would be 108 euro and 33 cents. Okay, when we see the currency, this is now euro, and we see here also the project ID to this which time record is assigned to. We also see the project name, project identifier, and activity. Needs approval is set to false. This is also more relevant for collaboration projects. Approved is true because we don't need approval and I'm the owner of this project. And invoice is false because this time record was not invoiced yet. So this is how a time record object looks like. Okay, so let's close this. And now let's start the timer. So we can see the timer is not running, and I have now here the start endpoint, and with that I can start the timer. Let's try it out, execute, and I get back response code 201 because the timer was started, and the response body shows me the start time in UTC. This is how it's saved in the database, and the message tells me timer was started. If I go back to the web application and I refresh the page, I can see that the timer is running. Okay. Now of course we can also hit the pause button. One more thing, what happens if I execute that again? Let's do that. I execute it again, and now I can see I get back response code 200, not 201, and I get back the exact same time, because we get back the same timer because there was no new timer started. I get back the already running timer in UTC, and the message tells me also timer was started already. Okay. So now I could reset the timer. I could revoke everything and reset it to 0. I can also pause it. Let's do that. Let's pause the timer, execute. And now I get back again response code 201 and a response body object. And here I can see the start time. I can see the pause time. I can see that so far no pause was recorded. And this is again in UTC. And the message tells me timer paused. And if I go back to the application and I refresh that, I can see that the timer is pausing. Okay. Alright, if I go to resume, I can now resume the timer. Let's do that. Execute. Now I get back response code 201 and I get again the start time of the timer, start offset, that's the start time plus the pause time, and pause total recorded is 41 seconds, and time zone is again UTC, and timer was resumed. And if I go back to the page, I refresh the page, I can see that the timer is running again. Okay. So that was start, reset, pause, resume. Now we can stop the timer, and if we want to stop the timer successfully, we also need to send a payload. And in the payload, we need to tell the server to which project that time record should be assigned to. So we need to send the project ID. Optionally, we can also send the activity. We also need to send the comment and hourly wage category. This is right now not so important, so we can ignore that. Okay, let's do it. And yeah, now we need a project ID. Let's get one. For that we have here another endpoint, user projects. And with that we can fetch all the user projects. And here we have a project which we just created. So we can just take the ID, close that, go back to the payload here, type it in. Okay, activity, we can use testing and comment my first API created time record. And this we don't need right now. Okay, so that we can execute, and we get back response code 201 because the new time record object was created. And here we get back the time record object. And if we go back to the user interface, we refresh the page, then we can see here my first API created time record. So this is a time record which we created through the API. And we can see the start time, stop time, we can see the pause, we can see the duration and also the wage. Okay, let's delete the other time records which we created manually, so that we only see the things we create through the API. Okay, so that was one way to record times with start, pause, resume and stop. But of course you can also directly create a time record of the time start stop with this endpoint here, post start stop. And here you can simply send a payload, and with that payload a new time record will be created. So for that payload we need again the project ID, activity, comment, hourly wage is optional. We need to have a date and a date format. The date is expected in a certain format, it's described here in the description. And if we send the date in a different format, then we also need to send the date format, but we will go with the default, that's why we can ignore that. And we also need to set the start time and stop time, and with that a new time record will be created. So let's try it out. Let's take the project ID, activity, testing, comment, my second time record. Hourly wage we can ignore. The date would be 2021 6/5. Okay. Date format we don't need to send because we go ahead with the default format. And start time I could say would be 10 to, let's say, 11:15. And that's enough. With that payload I can create a new time record. Execute. Here I can see again response code 201 because the new time record was created, and I get back the time record object which was created. And if I go back to the user interface, I refresh, I can see here the new time record which we just created. Okay. Then another option is to create a time record of a type duration. That would be this here. And for that we also have an endpoint. One more thing. Of course I can also edit with time records. And for the editing we have here the patch start-stop endpoints. And the payload is pretty much the same. I just need to submit also the ID of the time record, and then the time record with a given ID will be updated with the new payload. So that's how you can edit an existing time record of the type start-stop. Then we have here the duration endpoint, and the duration endpoint is a create or update or delete endpoint. So what does that mean? Right now it's that way that there can only be one time record of the type duration per date and project and activity. So I cannot have two time records for this date and this project and this activity. That's just not possible right now. And that's why if I submit now a payload of a type duration, and there is no time record for the given date and for the given project and for the given activity, then a new time record will be created. And if there is already an existing time record for the given date and project and activity, then the existing time record will be updated with the payload. And if in the payload the hours and minutes are 0, then it will be removed because there cannot be a time record with duration of 0. Okay, let's play that through. Let's create a new time record of type duration. Try out. We need again the project ID. We need an activity, testing, comment. This is a duration time record. Hour wage we can leave out. Date format we also don't need. Date would be 6/05. Now we can just say how many hours. Let's say 5 hours. And minutes we can say, for example, 10. And we can execute that. And we can see it worked. We get back response code 201. And we also get the new time record object. So if I go here to times, I can see this new time record which we just created. It's this here. Okay, now let's edit it. Now I can submit this payload again and just change a couple things. I can, for example, change the hours to 3 hours and minutes to 15, and the comments, this is an updated duration time record, and if I execute that, I get back now response code 200. Before it was 201 because we created a new object. Now I get 200 because an existing one was updated. And if I go back to the user interface, I update it, I can see that it was updated. Okay, so if I would now set hours to 0 and also minutes to 0, and I hit here the save button, then this will be removed. because the time record with duration 0 cannot exist. And we can also do it through the API. If we set that to 0 and we execute that, and we get response code 200, and we get back in the response body the message, the time record was deleted because hours and minutes are 0. And if I refresh this page, I can see that it disappeared. And also from my times table, I can also see that it disappeared. Okay, so that's why it's a create or update or delete endpoint. Alright, other from that we have get time records by ID. I think that should be pretty clear. And the delete endpoint, with that we can delete a time record with a given ID. Let's take one. Let's hit again the get, and let's take here time record ID. Let's close that, and now I can delete that. And I cannot delete every time record. Of course, the server will double check that the time record belongs to my user, and if that's the case, then it will be deleted. So if I hit the execute button, I get back response code 200. I can see that the time record was deleted successfully. And if I refresh the page, I can see that one disappeared. Okay. Yeah, so that are the endpoints for time recording at ZEIT-IO. I hope that's useful to you. And if you have questions, then simply leave a comment below the video. And thank you for your time, and see you next time.